is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, everybody. Here we go. All right, everybody. Welcome, episode number 214 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday night, January the 27th, 2024. My name is Jeremy Lee. I would like to thank everybody who tuned in last week for the episode with Simon Chan. And next Saturday, our guest is Mike Summer, passionate collector and the man behind the Wax Pack Hero podcast. MC Mondays is back on Monday, and tomorrow night, the PWCC Hockey Auction Ending Watch Party will be back as well. Want to ask everybody to join close to 500,000 people who have downloaded the Center Stage app across both iOS and Android for quick comps. Whether you're pricing your cards at shows or at home, you can build, organize, and share your collection with your friends and find other collectors to follow using their social sharing features. So check out their Instagram account and please join me in supporting the great team and the innovation they are taking at Center Stage app. Also, use protection, practice safe swaps. Veriswap is an app and middleman service that lets you securely trade cards through the mail. Every transaction up to $1 million in value is fully insured by their guarantee. Check them out on iOS and Android. And join me and Veriswap founder Raymond Lee every second Tuesday on Instagram Live, where we have the Veriswap Trade Desk 10 to 12-minute episode. I want to shout out Hobby News Daily. Check out hobbynewsdaily.com for your daily and weekly dose of hobby content, and also Leighton Sheldon and Just Collect and Vintage Breaks. Unfortunately, Leighton will not be with us tonight for the Vintage Spotlight. He had a conflict this evening, but we'll hope to see him back next Saturday. You can also buy and sell tag-graded cards on ComC. Tag's new Tag X grading service is a game changer. Pokemon, Lorcana, and other rounded corner TCGs are now eligible for grading. Visit taggrading.com if you value transparency and consistency in card grading. I'd like to thank all partners, sponsors, and of course, our loyal viewers and listeners for your ongoing support. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please take a moment and do so. And as always, your comments and your questions are in play. Let's get to it. Tonight's guest started in the hobby when his dad came home with a box of 88 Fleer, and every so often he'd give him packs to break in search of the Tom Glavine rookie card. He tried a few business ventures along the way through to 2017 when he started Filthbomb on Facebook. And when the pandemic started, they blew up into what is now Filthbomb Breaks. His favorite players of all time are Ken Griffey Jr., Jackie Robinson, and Shohei Ohtani, and his favorite teams are the pre-A-Rod New York Yankees and the New York Knicks. He's originally and currently hailing from Glen Cove, New York. Let's bring him out. Stephen Abbondondolo, welcome to Sports Cards Live. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's good to have you, Steve. It's good to have you. I'm excited for it, and I want to get into a few things with you. I want to learn about your hobby history and some exciting stuff that's been happening with you and Filthbomb lately. Let's start with that. Let's start a bit with your hobby history. Sort of take us through those early 88 Fleer days and just run us up to where we are now.
Yeah, so I guess that's how it all starts, right? Everyone has their story. So my earliest memory in the hobby is my dad coming home with wax boxes. He'd put them up in his closet, and every once in a while he'd bring down a pack, So like it felt like forever to get through a wax box. Now we go through them in seconds, and just it would last for like a month. And if out of nowhere, he'd be like, "Hey, come in here, take a pack out." We rip it. We're looking for the Glavine, and it's just that's what I remember most. And then it just got me hooked. We went to little flea market card shows with my friends with like $3, trying to make it stretch out as much as we could, and
Yeah, the good old days. I hear it. So you're doing that. Your dad's buying the boxes. He's giving them to you for, hey, you did good in school this week or whatever. Here, rip a few packs of the 88 Fleer and whatever else he was bringing home. That's back in the late 80s, I suppose. So take us through. Were you collecting through the 90s and the 2000s as well?
Yeah, for sure. I collected literally my whole life, off and on, I'd say, because when you get to high school, you're too cool for a little bit and you have other things, that you're getting into, whether it's sports. But I mean, I wouldn't say I've gone more than 2 years without actually like becoming obsessed again with something. I collected Griffey Jr. Probably from like 8 to 15, and then it took a backseat for a couple years. Then I got into vintage Jackie Robinson, and that's really where my passion was. I would just buy commons on eBay at 55 tops, and because I loved the design, and then it just snowballed into now I have a pretty nice Jackie Robinson collection.
I like the 55 tops a lot. It's kind of funny, right? You probably know this. 55 and 56 tops baseball, they're very similar. They're both horizontal. They both have like an action shot and a portrait. But the 56s, they have a much more detailed, action shot, if you will. Which do you prefer, 55 or 56?
I'm a 55 just because that was a card that they had in Beckett. So when you would go look up the set, it was the Jackie 55. And that's like the card. Even when I was just collecting Griffey, I had no interest. I would always, have to get to the 90s and flip through, and then I'd see that card always. Like, I want this card. And when I started my first card store, which was short-lived in 2014, no, actually it was 2012. It was a little tiny corner of a toy store at that time. Someone brought in the collection. The first card on top was a Jackie Robinson 55 tops. And it was like, it's just so weird how that stuff works out.
Yeah, no, that is funny. I like, they're both really nice. Don't get me wrong, but I also prefer the aesthetic of the 55 tops. I like the cleaner copy. It reminds me of the 38 Gaudi Joe DiMaggio, where there's two copies. There's the one without all the graffiti, that big bobblehead looking card. There's the one without the graffiti and the one with the graffiti. And I think number 250 is without it, and maybe 271 or 274 has it with the graffiti. I like the cleaner one without it. So I feel like I'm consistent that way. I prefer the cleaner aesthetic. Tell us a bit about, the 2000s leading up until really the early 2010s. What were you doing in the 2000s?
2000. So 2003, to date myself, I graduated high school, and then I was in the music industry, songwriting and singing, and I collected. That's when I started actually collecting vintage. It wasn't Jackie, but I just started getting obsessed with commons, just from everything from little Bowman, the minis, to Gaudi, to tops, 50s tops. And I just had like a whole binder full of just vintage, commons. It wasn't worth much. Then I would say fast forward to 2014, I moved out of the toy store. I was like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it, work. Card store. Started it, lasted for 6 months, shut it down. The hobby was dead at the time. And then fast forward a little further, 2017, I discovered the Facebook group world. I discovered all that stuff, discovered breaking, and I was like, this makes sense. This is what I want to do.
And did you feel like you would be able to bring something to breaking that maybe the others out there that you were watching didn't? What did you see that made you feel like there was an opportunity for you?
Yeah, for sure. So everything in life happens for a reason. I truly do believe it. There's, you can't really explain the way things work. They just work out for a certain reason. So I did music for 15 years. So in my eyes, I failed. Like, I didn't make it to where I wanted to go. But when I tell you that 99% of what I learned in music prepared me for what we're doing right now, because it's so closely intertwined, whether it's the marketing, like you had to market yourself, right? In music, you had to market your music. Whether it's, you had to just get super creative as well. So when I came into the sports card, breaking space, I always use this phrase. It was just so ripe for the picking, because the biggest person in the space didn't even have a logo. And I was like, this is perfect. I could just start from scratch, grind as hard as I possibly can, and I'm confident I could pick up market share.
So you start the Facebook group Filthbomb Breaks.
Yes.
And what did it take, or what was the moment where you transitioned from Facebook to, a full-blown business? How did you take that leap? Tell us a bit about, the mindset, but also some of the risks and challenges that you felt you were undertaking.
Yeah, for sure. So we started the Facebook group first as Top Tier Collectibles, and that was just vintage, because that was like my real passion. And it was just buying and selling vintage cards. And then I started breaking 2017 one time just because I saw that other people were breaking. So I was like, let's try it in our group. And it was 2017 Topps High Tech Baseball. And I started with 6 boxes. That was like all I had to my name. I went to the hobby shop, bought 6 boxes of High Tech, put it on the table, and we filled it. And I mean, the production quality was terrible. Everything about it was terrible. And, you know, I was just throwing myself in the fire. But yeah, people gravitated towards it. People liked the brand, or not even the brand per se, but just how I was kind of putting sports cards and breaking in a different light. It was more entertaining. You know, it wasn't just opening up packs, going through the cards. I was a big fan of Vince Scully. So what I would do is, especially like the Dodgers and Brooklyn Dodgers, I really, you know, love them. So what I would do is actually commentate and bring it to life, whether it's, you know, if you notice at the beginning of our breaks, I say what time it is, what day it is, you know, where we're streaming from, sometimes what type of day it is outside. I tried to bring everything to life, kind of so you felt like you were there. And like every break had its own little story almost, where it wasn't just generic. It wasn't just, you know, hey, start the break, rip cards, end the break. It all kind of flowed and it was a story. And that's what I felt, you know, at the beginning set us apart. Plus we got more excited. We got a lot more energetic, you know, during the break, which the hobby was definitely missing at the time.
Yeah, we see a lot more of that now for sure. But I love how you try to really give each break its own little story, and even announcing that what day. I do that at the beginning of my episodes too. You know, today's the day that in the year too, because down the road people come back and watch. Oh, I wonder what year this happened in. You know, there's only been 25 January 27th that have gone by, so who knows when it was. I think that's great. Tell us, okay, a little bit about like what is Filthbomb Breaks now? Obviously, it's a breaking company, but if there's anything you'd like to add to that, and how big is your team? Tell us a bit about the company.
So right now we have about, including breakers, shippers, sorters, marketing, there's 25 of us, I believe, give or take. So we originally started out just on Facebook. It wasn't even supposed to get to this point. It was just literally to have a job and do something I enjoyed. But now, I mean, I guess we consider ourselves, you know, we're a pretty big brand in the hobby. I don't want to say influencers because we're not that. But I guess we provide content. You know, we provide advice if people have it. They'll come to us all the time. Hey, what should I do with this card? Hey, what's this card worth? And, you know, to the best of our ability, we try to help people in that respect. Yeah, that's really.
Yeah, but that's a lot. 25 people. That seems like a big company. I mean, you've got some HR duties on top of just running the business and all that.
Yeah.
What kind of turnover do you guys encounter, and how do you? This is a question I'm so curious about because, you know, how do you find people that you can trust, and how do you find breakers who are going to, you know, employees who are breaking in front of the camera, who are going to uphold the standards that you guys set from yourselves at the beginning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the number one thing is everyone that I don't want to say everyone now, because as we're getting bigger, it's tough to keep it in circle. But John, my partner, he is my brother-in-law. My number one breaker is my best friend since I was 3. We had John's brother work with us. John's brother's best friend work with us. Frankie's second cousin is one of our newest breakers now. And it's just everyone, for the most part, is from right here at Glen Cove or very close to it. So that's one thing. Everybody here knows each other in some way outside of here before they started working here. So, you know, that helps with the trust factor. As we're getting bigger, though, it's tough. We ran out of people. Like our circle's done, you know, like nobody else knows anybody. We're out. We're looking for more help.
You've exhausted the inner supply, and now you got to look outwards for your pipeline for people to do the job. Well, I mean, you know, you'll do what you have to do to find the people, and you'll have to, you know, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I assume you'll vet them, and then you'll watch them, and you'll, you know, hopefully everybody works out. But you got to think you'll go through a bit more of that. All right, let's say hello to the crowd, and then we're gonna keep on going here. We got Jake Dahl with us. What's up, Jake? Perk is here. Good evening. Shannick. Yeah, I saw the Leafs beat the Jets tonight. Michael is here. What's going on, Michael? Lauren Florio, nice to see you. The Cardboard Corner, good evening. Robert Scott, Bobby Baseball, Foul 5-Ball, Dan's Vintage, good evening to you. Glad you're looking forward to it. Mark Santucci, it was 10. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. The Professor has joined us. Dennis87 says, Jay Lee as a breaker. I don't know that's, I don't know how good I'd be at breaking. I wouldn't be able to pronounce most of the names. T-Dot, what's going on? And Daniel is here as well. Okay, let's jump in right into this topic because this is brand new. This happened, I think, yesterday, but you guys Filthbomb Breaks was featured in the New York Times.
Yeah.
Tell us, like, first of all, that has to be some of the best possible marketing you can get. And not only for you, but it's also got to be pretty good for the hobby. Tell us, like, how'd that come about? What do you think of it? And what do you think it means for you in the hobby?
Yeah. So, and again, right, everything happens for a reason. We were in the Fanatics studio for something else, and they came up to us like, hey, the Times is here. You want to, be part of the story? I was like, hell yeah. Right. But it's like, that's how that happened. And I mean, I do think it's great for the hobby, right? Because now it's on like a national stage. Like, people that don't necessarily even know what it is from that article, now they're learning what that is, and I think there has to be more stuff like that too. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, Yeah,
well, we'll see. I mean, with Fanatics at the helm of at least, the ultra modern product and moving forward with the companies that they have, the ability that they have to, hey, they got LeBron James now, who's been under Upper Deck's umbrella for years and years. They bought Topps. I mean, like that's a pretty serious thing. And now they're taking a run at the live shopping, network, or industry, channel with Fanatics Live, of which you're a big part of. Tell us a little bit about, how did you get to be with Fanatics Live, and how important is that to you and to Filthbomb?
Yeah, I mean, I think Fanatics is the future, right? I think what they're doing to the hobby is the future. You have to be blind not to see that. I say that all the time too. They're literally owning everything, and they are such a major part of how everything's operating right now. So again, back to everything happens for a reason. They approached us like, it's just, right place, right time. I feel like we're doing the right thing, and it placed us in a good position. That's all I tried to do from the beginning, just put us in a position to succeed should something like this even ever happen. So yeah, that's really, nothing special happened,
Did it help that you were located in New York? Like, do you think that was a factor in as far, because you said they sort of came to you. Why did they come to you? How did they find you?
I guess we were the biggest, or one of the biggest, baseball brands in the hobby at the time when they were looking for breakers to bring on. I know it was us, and Leighton was big with baseball, and I think Blaise was pretty big with baseball. And they liked the whole brand, the logo, the mascot, the people that work there, the breakers. So I think that had a big part to do with us getting in, for sure.
And what about, like, so they come to you, and obviously you're going to be receptive to hear what they have to say, but this might be a silly question, but how hard was it to decide to move your breaking platform from where you were over to Fanatics Live?
It was so crystal clear. It was the easiest decision of my life. Because I truly believed in what is happening with Fanatics, and they own Topps. We're one of the biggest baseball breakers at that moment. It was like a no-brainer,
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
no, so it was like you said, it was pretty easy, and the transition has been nice and smooth for you guys.
Yeah, super smooth. I mean, it's crazy. It baffles my mind because there's still breakers out there that aren't on Fanatics. Big breakers. And it's like,
Yeah.
do they not believe? The writing's on the wall.
You see it very clearly, don't you?
Yeah.
You said earlier that, when you did, I think you said when you broke those first 6 boxes of baseball cards back in 2017, that you just wanted to do something that made you happy. So what were you doing before that? And tell us about your lifestyle decision.
Yeah. So before that, I was working with my father. He's an accountant and he does wealth management. And like I said, I was doing music for 15 years after high school. So you have to go to school. And I kept dropping out doing music. You have to go to school. I kept dropping out. I just hated it. Right. And it's the same thing where I eventually got my degree. And then I had to go over with him, worked with him doing accounting. And then I also got my Series 65. So I was an investment advisor. But I hated it. Clock watching. It was just, it was a long day, right? Every day was a long day. So I decided, I looked in the mirror and I was just like, I really don't care how much money I'm making right now. It's not worth it. Like life's too short. Right. So I did the math. I'm like, what can I make on a break? If I buy it from a hobby store at 600 after I clear shipping and fees, and I can make $125 a break. And I was like, I do 2 of these a day. That's $250. Right. I was like, I do 5 days a week. Right. I'm like, over $1,000 times 52. I'm like, I could be an entrepreneur. I could do it. Right. It was easy. It was a lot better than, making a little more and staring at a wall the whole day,
And yeah, I mean, listen, I think you're one of many people who have done that, kind of followed their passion, especially in this. You did it pre-pandemic, but in the pandemic and post-pandemic, I think we're seeing more and more people do it. And of course, being as immersed in the sports card industry as we are, we're seeing people do it within sports cards. So, but I think there's a lot of people who would like to do it and find a way in. How do you feel the breaker world is right now? Like, is it saturated? Is it full? Is there room for more people to start and come in now? How what are the barriers to entry for someone to come in and try to build something like what you've done?
So I never want to say you can't do anything, right? Or you can't do something, because I'm a firm believer, if you give 150% and you don't stop and you just keep going, the next person ahead of you stops a little bit, you're going to catch them eventually. But that would have been a great question in 2019, right? Because if you were doing this in 2019 and then the pandemic happened, you're good. Right now, there's so many people that got in after the pandemic, not because necessarily they wanted to start a community and they wanted to, start a business. They saw dollar signs and they were like, I could catch a bag fast right now. Yeah. So it is oversaturated, again, very much like the music industry was, right? So now it's just so hard. If you want to start from scratch right now, you can do it, right? But it's very, very unlikely that a breaker right now would, blow up.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there still innovation that's ripe for the picking out there? Like, are there, I know the answer to this has to be yes, but it's going to take some creativity, I think, at this point for somebody to come in and innovate as a breaker. Like, you can do crazy things behind the camera. And I just mean like entertainment crazy. Is there innovation left to be had for breakers? And it's a tough question to answer, but I'd like to hear what you have to say, if anything.
I think there's always something that could be done to enhance anything, right? Like, nothing's ever perfect. I just don't know what that is. There could be something, I'm sure. There was something, it was missing a lot in 2017.
Yeah.
We've come such a long way in 6-7 years. So I think it depends on the technology too, right? Technology changes. There could be a game changer that happens as the technology changes. So I do think, we're going to see things. I just don't know when or what they even are. But AI even too, like with the, AI is becoming insane. Something with AI is going to come over into the breaking world. I can't see it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, something will happen. We're also streaming live to Instagram. Hello to everyone on Instagram. Stukes, I see your comment. Good evening to you, Web02 Soul Tough guys. Good to see you out there. And I want to say hi to David Kaplan here. Dennis87 talking about the New York Times feature. Michael as well. Very good guys. Thank you for being here. You mentioned your father, CPA, wealth advisor, and that's why I use the word fiduciary responsibility and intent in the title of this episode, because we talked earlier, and one of the key questions that I had for you was, how have you avoided a lot of the controversy that seems to surround some of the high profile breakers? And that's one of the reasons why I was happy to have you on the show, is because I've never seen anything, about you guys. It's always positive. And when I met you and you told me about, kind of how you approach the business, it kind of made sense to me, but that's hearing it from me. I want the audience to hear it from you. Why? How should I put this? I'm just going to ask you the question as I just did. How have you avoided all the controversy?
I mean, just doing things the right way, I guess.
And what does that mean?
So my dad, we're very different in so many ways, but one thing he always said, and it was when I was working with him trying to become an investment advisor, he was selling at, doing commission sales, selling stocks that you would make a commission on. And I'm like, this is like, you can make a lot of money doing this. And he's like, yeah, I'm stopping. I was like, why? He's like, because I actually have the decision right then and there to sell somebody something that isn't necessarily good for them to make $1. So by being an investment advisor, you become a fiduciary, and now you have to act in the best interest of your customers, your clients. So every decision you're making, although you are going to make money off the portfolio, it has to be done in their best interest according to what their needs are. And there's, regulations on that and people overlooking. And at the end of the day, somebody can come in and be like, why would you make that move for that person when it clearly didn't fit, their lifestyle or their risk tolerance? And I kind of did it the same way in this, I kind of emulated the exact model and brought it over here. And even I would say we didn't start this to make money. Like, we started to make a living, but we didn't start it to, make money. So when I first started, every single person in the Facebook group was just as important as the next one. And it was, I wanted to earn your business. And if that meant, giving you my honest feedback, my honest opinion, sometimes I wouldn't even let people buy. If they wanted to make a purchase, I'm like, that's a bad move. And I knew people because it's Facebook and you're building a community and a family sort of on that side. And it's like, I know what you do for a living. There's no way you're spending $500 right now on this break. Like, this is a straight impulse buy that, pump the brakes, and it's very much, what an investment advisor would do. If somebody's like, hey, I want to get into some alternative investments. I want to get risky. Let's get into crypto. And it's like, that's not the best idea.
So you care about the customer.
Yeah, that's how it started out. Like, we knew everybody that was getting in the breaks. Right now, it's hard to know each and every person. We have like thousands of people buying with us. But yes, at the beginning, we knew each and every customer. We knew what type of job they did, what their family was like. They had kids. Now it's very hard to track that with, what do we have now? 8 different breakers. So every breaker, we try to have them learn everybody that breaks with them. But like me personally, it's so tough now. It's like a different world.
I like this comment from T-Dot. It says, good character avoids controversy. I think that's an astute comment. Ziggy Noah says, do you think breaking needs regulation?
I don't think that would be the worst thing. I really don't. I mean, there's companies out there now trying to regulate pricing at least. I think that's important, but I think there's things that are more important than even the pricing right now that needs to be regulated, right? Just like Fanatics is starting to do it. They're trying to weed out breakers that shouldn't be breaking. But I think that needs to be regulated, right? Like, you wouldn't, back to the investment world, like, somebody that wasn't licensed, you wouldn't be buying, advice from them or buying stocks based on what they were telling you. So it's kind of like right now, it's a Wild West still, as far as that goes. Anybody can sell anything to anyone, whether it's in their best interest or not, whether, even if the item's stolen, even not that, it could be, but people could sell hot items right now. Like there's no regulation on anything.
Yeah. And is Fanatics, like, you said they're trying to weed out some breakers that shouldn't be breaking. Are they like, how have they caused you to up your game, let's say, to up your professionalism, and not just you, all the breakers on their platform versus, breakers who are just breaking themselves with, like, on, say, YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, or breakers that are breaking on some of the other big platforms out there? What have they done to really cause you to be worthy of the, because if something goes wrong, it can impact both your brand and their brand, or whoever's brand and their brand. So what have they done to really try to mitigate that risk for both of you guys?
So we kind of were seasoned in the aspect where we were like a plug and play, where they knew what they had with us and they could put us, just basically do your thing. But I know with a lot of other breakers, they are training. They're doing training, teaching them what type of equipment they should even be using, lighting setups, stuff like that, security measures. One thing I love about Fanatics, which I think is a lot of people out there, they don't even know this. I'm sure they're allowed to know it, but there's a security camera constantly streaming in the room. So if somebody ever said something like, hey, I think he took cards off the camera, I think they swapped something out, there's security continuously running where Fanatics could see it. So I think that's like huge.
So does Fanatics have eyes on you full time? I mean, that seems like that would be excessive, but or at least they can go back and see.
Yeah, they could watch our stream as anytime we hit go live, their camera's on.
Okay,
it goes on with that.
So they have a camera in your physical building as well as the cameras you have to stream to your audience.
Correct.
That's a pretty good measure, I would say. I think that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense to me. I think that's a good thing to do. Mark Santucci wants to, will you guys be in Cleveland at the National at the end of July?
Probably walking around. I'm over getting in the booth. I'm done with it. Especially in the Breaker Pavilion. It's just like nobody comes to see the breakers.
Yeah, I always thought the Breaker Pavilion, at first I thought it was a great thing, but it seems like, it's not utilized properly. It's kind of a dead space at the National. It could be used a lot better, I think. Hopefully they'll get there soon. Ziggy has another question. How do you protect yourself from selling to minors, underage customers, let's say?
Shoot, I don't even. That's a great question. I guess, wouldn't that be with the credit card check and everything? Or what's it actually? Is there a difference if you sell to minors?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I think
if you sell sports cards.
Yeah, it's sports cards. You're right. I'm not sure, but I mean, I know that to have a PayPal account, you need to have, your guardian, if you're under 18, to sign off on a credit cards as well. So, anything that Fanatics says about that you can recall?
I'm sure everything's on their side. Like they have to approve the customer and all that stuff to begin with. So I'm sure they have measures in place.
So that's a better question for Fanatics Live than it is for Filthbomb. Yeah, because
when I heard that question, my mind was like, "What?" Yeah. I wasn't, because I don't even think about that because we don't have to, because it's already handled prior to getting to us.
Right. And one more question from him: is breaking a skill? Can anybody break, and should it be a licensed professional? Like a I'll let you answer.
I mean, some good questions he has. I think it's 100% a skill. It's an art too. There's an art to it. There's a cadence to it. It's, from start to finish, you need to know when to speed up. You need to know when to slow down. You need to know when to get excited. You have to know how to let somebody down nicely when they may have spent a good amount of money and didn't get the result they wanted. So it's definitely a skill. And I think, it is like a trade. I think you could make an argument for that it could be a licensed professional.
I mean, I think it comes with, at this point, it's still early. Like, there's no body to issue the license at this point.
Yeah.
But I think what's important is that, is that you guys as the company, that you vet your breakers and that you train them. And I'm sure you're doing that. I mean, that's an assumption I'm making, but I think it's probably a safe one that you're vetting. I mean, you said you've been drawing off of your inner circle for your employees thus far, but if you do go outside of that, you're going to be vetting them, and you're going to be training them and having them watch some video on how to do it, right? And before you unleash them to the crowd. So, but to be a licensed professional, listen, I'm not saying that's never going to happen. That could happen where there is some sort of accreditation or course that is like, and it maybe isn't even necessary to do it, but you as the employer would say, hey, go take this course, just so you understand how important it is to keep your hands on camera all the time, and all the keys to it. So, but I think we're ways away from that, if ever. Eric P says, best breaker in the business. Now I have to go mess with Frankie and spend some money. Go break with Frankie and set some money. T-Dot says you need an on-site accountant, which, well, you have some experience there, so you are yourself. Let's change topics, Stephen. Lots of talk in the hobby about loaded boxes. The loaded box conspiracy. We've seen some of the big breakers hit the biggest cards. We've seen some breakers breaking with athletes, hitting some cards of the athlete themselves. And there's a lot of speculation, a lot of conspiracy theory out there. And I don't think we've really, been advised or learned if there is any truth to it or not. But with that said, what are your thoughts on all the accusations that we see out there that, that certain boxes, certain card companies are pushing certain cards to certain breakers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I'm here to set the record straight. We do get loaded boxes. No, I'm kidding. So basically, I get both sides. I understand why people would think that, and I'll say straight up, we may be getting loaded boxes, but I promise you, I do not have any proof of it. But if I'm the card distributors, you're going to want the best cards to be seen by the most people. It is a business. I'm not saying I'm just saying if I was a card company,
you understand,
I understand.
You understand the incentive to do it, which is partially why there is the conspiracy out there, because it does kind of make sense that it would be good marketing. But I mean, and I don't know either way. And I think it's plausible that it's happening, but it also might just be a numbers game and purely coincidental. I mean, some people have won the lottery twice. Is that random or is that a loaded lottery ticket? I think it's mostly, well, I don't know. I'm not going to say because I really have no idea.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting to hear that you do see you do understand kind of the fuel for the fire, and I think that says a lot, because I think we all do. The question is it happening? And like you said, you might be getting loaded boxes, but if you do, you don't know about it. So, and why do you say you might be even? Like have you had more an above average big hit rate, you think?
I mean, I don't keep track of what other people are getting, but we pull big cards, but it could just be a volume thing, surely a volume thing. So there isn't really there's no rhyme or reason to it. I could see both sides to it. But the one thing I don't get is the people that are saying, oh my God, these breakers pulling these massive cards is so bad for the hobby. But what's worse for the hobby? That card getting pulled and no one knowing that card's pulled, and people keep spending money looking for that card. That's even worse, right?
I hear that, but let me just push back a little bit and say, but that's been the history of the hobby up until, up until, the pandemic. We had group breaking before that, but it was on a much smaller scale. But so that's been the history of the hobby. So if that is what built us up to today, and I don't know the answer to this, so it's not necessarily a pushback, more just the discussion. Is it worse? Or I see why you're saying it's worse, because now you got all these customers paying to get into breaks to hopefully hit something that's already been pulled. Isn't it the Kobe Bryant Prism 101 or something like that that's still out there?
The Luka.
Thank you. The Luka 101. I mean, that might be sitting in a box somewhere that some guy pulled and didn't even know. And it's been sitting there. He's out of the hobby for the last 10 years. And people are still going to try, and they're still going to pay thousands of dollars for a box of that, thinking they might be able to hit it. So is that good or bad for the hobby? It's bad for that person who's buying boxes now, if that card's been hit, but it's good for the people sitting on that inventory. So how do you kind of reconcile that after going through that thought process?
Yeah, it's I would say if we're going to grow the hobby, though, you do want. I mean, it helps, in my opinion, I could be totally wrong, but it helps the hobby seeing content of these massive cards being pulled, because people get to be in that moment, whether it's their card or not. They get to see what it's like to see one of these cards pulled. Because the truth of the matter is, somebody going and buying one box, the percentage you pulling that massive card is so low. It happens. But like now, I guess the hobby's trying to get pushed to the breaking side. And that's like the reason why people want to break. Like, hey, when we break, we have a chance of hitting these big cards, Yeah.
No, I think I see both sides of it. I really do. Ziggy says, can I suggest a lower cost model with encouraging tips? Do you receive tips today? I mean, there are some people, and I think Ziggy's one of them, who feel that breakers make too much money. I don't agree with that. I think you're providing a service. You have labor involved, and sure, people could buy the whole box themselves and pay less than the sum of what you break it out for in pieces. But that's what the business is. I can go to the grocery store and I can buy one piece of cake for $3 that has 8 pieces, or I can buy the whole cake for $20 or $18 and save money. Bulk discount is something that's in every industry. So I don't agree with that line of thinking. I think I think breakers are entitled to their profit as long as it's measured, until you become, a pig about it. And it gets offensive. How do you feel about that whole, the pricing model of breaking?
I mean, I agree completely with what you just said. I really do think a lot of people are counting people's money right now, which is never a good thing. But as long as you don't get piggish with it, you are providing a service. And especially if you're providing a service better than a lot of other people are providing a service, like there may be 5 plumbers. That best plumber is going to charge a premium because he's the best plumber. Yeah. Right. And it's in any field, not just plumbing, not just sports cards. It's, and people make the argument, oh, anybody could open up a card. So, but when you have a brand, like you said, and you have employees and you have overhead, there's a price that you kind of have to charge if you're going to want to keep that business even alive.
Stale Prod says, what's up? There's the man who pulled the out of 5 gold vinyl Burrow auto. Is that, I don't know if that's true. Is it? And tell us a bit about that.
No, I think if that's who I think it is, I pulled 2 of them. I pulled one gold vinyl, 1 gold RPA from Prism. But yeah, that was one of our first breaks in 2020 of Prism football. And we just got another loaded box. Panini doesn't even mess with us. So if we pull anything big from Panini, you have zero argument at all with us.
When you say loaded box, you mean a good box. You're not saying you received and that's an important distinction for our audience and for even, into the future. When you say we broke a loaded box, you mean the box was a good. There are good boxes and there are bad boxes. When I've opened boxes, I'm usually the guy that gets the bad boxes. But but for your customers, you're gonna break some good boxes here and there for sure. Another comment from Ziggy. He says here, it would be great if breakers did report hits to a tracking service. Breakers have lots of data they should be paying attention to. I think that's a good point. I don't know, that's probably out there. Even think that reminds me of that app that Jeff Wilson from Sports Card Investor tried to start, and it didn't work out, but where it was, I forget what it was. I forget the name of it, Hits maybe or something like that, but where the hit was good, and the fact it was going to turn into an NFT, that who cares about that? It's the fact that tracking the hits, I think, is a great thing. But the most important part of that to me, Stephen, is that it provides provenance for the ultimate buyer of that card to say, hey, there's where this card that someone's trying to sell me was broke. It came from this breaker. We know it's a pack pulled card, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us about how you feel about the benefit of breaking towards providing provenance.
I mean, I think it's very important. Like, for example, the Ruth Otani duel that just went off, it had a story behind it. And I think that's what made it so cool. There was a bounty out, it got hit. Everyone tracked it from the second it got pulled and put up at auction, and it had eyes on it. But I do think that being able to track the hits as well, like we were talking about, Ziggy was talking about, is very important. And it's important for two reasons. The first being what I spoke about earlier. If a card's been hit, and you could actually buy more responsibly, right? You're not just buying blind. I think there's someone on Instagram, Superfractor Tracker, and that's what they try to do is every draft release or Bowman Chrome release, they track every Superfractor, so you could go there and see what's been hit, what hasn't been hit yet. And then also, I guess it would be good just for the argument that everyone's making, loaded boxes, you could actually do the math yourself. And be like, hey, they hit these big cards, but how much product do they actually open?
Yeah. No, I think there's lots of benefit to it. A tracking service would be great for sure. If there was one place you could go, there's actually a guy on Instagram right now. I think it's Dennis87 who was in here earlier, who is posting up a post to his story for and he's a hockey guy. So like from the cup came out recently, he's posting all the big hits to his Instagram. And hey, pulled by such and such. Congratulations to the owner, this and that. I love those posts. Keep them up, Dennis, if you're still watching, because number one, it's showing me I'm not following all the breakers. So a tracking somebody, if there is somebody out there who wants to start a business in this space, and you can have eyeballs on all the breakers every day, and you can do a summary, kind of like what Card Ladder does at the end of the night. They're up at 3 and 4 in the morning, and they're vetting all these sales. Someone to do that, like they're watching, they have eyes on all the auctions, to have eyes on all the breaks, and then to post all the hits somewhere the next morning. Imagine waking up, Stephen, every day and seeing all the hits in a reel where it's like 3 seconds per hit, and you can see who broke it. And then if you want to buy one, maybe you can reach out to that breaker and say, hey, you need to hire, a big operation like yours would need to hire someone just to respond to those requests, probably on behalf of your customers who now own the cards. Any legs to that idea? And I have to think someone's already working on it. What do you think?
See, I love these discussions because, like, look, we just came up with it, right? Like, we were talking about innovation in the breaking space, and it's like, there's one.
Yeah.
I think that would be great for everyone. It would make my life so much easier. And then breakers could actually change pricing in real time. Like, sometimes we're pricing out something and you don't know that they're, the Wyatt Langford Papa 1 of 1 came out of Sapphire. So you're still charging $700 on the case for the Rangers, when now we have to adjust in real time. Who hasn't been hit here? There's only 1,000 cases produced. Bryce Eldridge hasn't been pulled yet for the Giants. They have to come up now. The Rangers have to come down. I think real time, something like that would actually be so beneficial for everyone, collectors, breakers, buyers, sellers, because now they know what's come out. They could go chase it.
Yeah. I think there's potentially something there. Okay, here's a tough one for you, Stephen. This comes from where'd it go? This comes from Foul. Or no, this comes where'd it go? Sorry. I want to find this one. Yeah, Foul 5 Ball. He says, I'm not a fan of breaking. It is not entertaining. Very fishy business. I would rather open it on my own. I'm not a fan of Fanatics taking over the hobby. Why should I like this guy? I mean, you don't have to like him. And fellow Fireball's name is Jeremy. Jeremy, you don't have to like Stephen, but I don't know. He's a pretty nice guy. You can judge that for yourself. But Stephen, I'd like you to maybe just respond, because we were going to talk about a little bit later the whole the sentiment out there, which I'm sure fellow Fireball shares, is, are breakers bad for the hobby? And we were going to talk about this anyway. Let's do it now in the context of this comment here. I'll turn it over to you to address that.
All right. So, like, first off, I want to respond with this question with a question. Respond to his question with a question. And why is Fanatics taking over the hobby bad? A lot of people say this. A lot of people are saying, oh, this is so bad for the hobby. Like, in what? Before Fanatics, right? Let's go back 2 years. It was a Wild West. People are waiting outside Target for blasters. Like, it was, anything went, right? Anything goes. And this is like the beginning of some sort of regulation where, I mean, you want to talk about capitalism. I think before this, we saw so much more capitalism now. People are flipping cards for $1,000 that are worth $10 now. So, I mean, I don't know if necessarily Fanatics taking over the hobby is a bad thing. I think what it's doing is adding some more structure, and it's kind of, it is taking money out of some people's pockets. So, like, if you're saying it from a business standpoint, I can see you saying that. But as a collector, I think this is just opening up the door to a million things that would never have been possible. You get to go meet Victor Wembanyama. They're going to have redemptions and cards to throw out the first pitch for the World Series, potentially. You know, like, there's going to be things like that that are going to bring collectors to a level that it's not just opening up a pack anymore. It's not just getting a card and putting it in the binder. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. There were issues before, and it's still early in Fanatics' reign to see where it's going to go. But a lot of people are watching what they're doing with, very closely. And there's some very strong opinions, for and against what they are doing. And I'm not willing to form my opinion until a couple of years have gone by, when they're really in the business and they've got the licenses in the sports that they're going to be working with. And then we'll see. It's the kind of thing that we're not going to really know if Fanatics was good or bad for the hobby until there's some pudding for there to be proof in. There's right now, it's very little. There have been some things. David Kaplan asks, have you guys ever hit the same superfractor twice? Which is something that was an oversight, a grave error that happened at Topps earlier this year or last year. But let's let you answer Dave Kaplan's question.
We actually hit one. We hit the same one as Real Breaks. I forget who it was though. Juan Benjamin, maybe, first Bowman Super. So we have hit one of the supers that had two of them. Yeah. Real quick, if I could go back to your last question, actually, I was just thinking something else.
Yeah.
I feel like, think how much money they pumped in, right? Fanatics. And I'm not endorsing them in any way. Like, it is what it is. I'm not getting paid to say any of this. Products are the same price that they were last year before Fanatics. Has there been a product that's astronomically more than it was? Like, Stadium Club just came out. I don't even think there was a price increase. So, like, all this money is getting put into the hobby, into product development, into everything. And the collector, the consumer, is not even seeing an increase in price. Some products like Topps Chrome Black, another low-end product, I don't even think that's on an increase in price. So it's like, imagine putting all this money in and not charging more right now.
Well, it might be volume, right? I think the speculation is they're gonna print more, they're gonna sell more. And I mean, with the the tagline that's just overtaking the hobby of 10xing the hobby, if they're not going to increase price, they're going to have to increase supply. And then will that have a negative impact on the secondary market values down the road? Now, I mean, let's face it, a lot of that additional printing or incremental printing or production is going to be base cards, which are worthless, whether there's 5,000 of them or 50 or 500,000 of them. They're worthless anyway. As far as secondary market goes, they're worth what, 12 cents, 18 cents on ComC sort of thing. You're not paying the shipping to get a base card anymore. So I think it would have to come that way. What are your thoughts on volume?
So volume to me doesn't make a difference as long as the hobby's growing. So like if they're making double the amount or triple the amount, but we have triple the amount of collectors, it's the same thing, right? There's going to be a buyer for every seller in that instance. But the true collectors, right? Let's go to Bowman, for example. They're looking for the superfractor, right? They're looking for the reds, looking for the orange, looking for the gold. So I feel like none of that changes. You know, it's those people aren't going for the new parallels anyway. The yellows to 75. So like they're making more, but those true colors are holding value regardless. You know, it's just a way for them to make more and produce more. But I don't think it affects the singles. The singles that people actually want, it doesn't change anything.
Yeah. All right. Here's a comment, another sort of, controversial comment. And so we're gonna put it up and read it out. Dan says, does Stephen acknowledge that breaking is gambling? And like casinos, do they have any policy to deal with people who are addicted to breaking? And we covered that earlier, Dan. And I want to follow that comment off though with Stale Prod here saying breaking or opening wax is both a gamble. It's part of the hobby. Breaking allows people to share the risk, which is actually a really good thing. You're actually you lower your risk by going with the breaker than you do by going into the LCS. If in my opinion, especially if, and I think one of the policies at under Fanatics is that everybody has to get something. I think, is that correct?
Yes.
So if that's the fact, which it is, you've just verified, then and if we're going to say that breaking is gamble, and I'm not saying there isn't a gamble aspect, because you're going to buy your team. You might get cards worth what you bought, or what you paid. You might get cards worth more. You might get cards worth less, versus going into the clothing store and buying a pair of jeans or pants for $100. You paid $100 for your pants. There's no gamble with buying a pair of pants unless you mismeasured yourself, sort of thing. Silly as that sounds. But breaking, LCSs, going to the wax stand at the card show, going to Walmart. I mean, if breaking is gambling, then Walmart and Target are also facilitating gambling. I don't see a distinction between the ways the cards are getting out into the hobby. The product has to get broken one way or another. And to Michael's comment here, I'm a collector, so I just buy singles. I always get what I want. Yeah. But without people breaking and taking that risk, taking that gamble to open the product, single buyers aren't going to have anything to buy. So we need them in the ecosystem, I feel. You want to respond?
I agree again with a lot of what you're saying. I think that being able to open up product in the abundance that we're breaking it helps two people. It's going to help the person that's a wax collector, because now the supply is going way down, right? If you're just choosing to hold on to your wax is going to inevitably become more valuable, especially if the big cards don't get pulled, right? Every time like a case of definitive got ripped and that Otani root didn't come out, that case went up. So it could backfire as well, right? But then it also helps the collectors out there. There's so many times I'm in a Facebook group and I'm, the same thing he just said. Oh, I'm a collector. I buy the singles. I get what I want. But if we weren't busting out product at the rate we're busting it out, the chance you find that one-to-one of your favorite player from that product is so unlikely. And those cards, go on eBay on day after release and see how many cards pop up, how many superfractors pop up. Like they're there fast. And it's because we're busting through them at a fast rate. I think you're on mute.
LGC says break comp cards tracks the cost per team across breakers. You familiar with this break comp cards and what they're doing these days?
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the hobby, right? Like in theory, it's a very good idea, right? Tracking prices. I mean, there's two things, right? This is my theory, and I don't want to step on any toes. I don't want to say anything, but if you have to be the cheapest, you have to be the cheapest usually for a reason. So that's one. If you're the cheapest, I love you still. All right. I love you. And then two, if you're the cheapest and you're that cheap and you're number one or number two or number three, you're not going to be that cheap for much longer because you're going to run out of those cases and the reorder is coming and you're going to have no cases and you're going to have to rebuy and your price is going up. So it's kind of like, it looks nice. And it's like, oh, look at these. One, by the time you go to that person's break that has a Texas Rangers misprice and Wyatt Langford for $100, they're taken already. And there's only so many cases that guy's selling at that price. So it's like, it's nice on release day for the first day. But after that, it's like everyone's so close in price anyway, because everyone's reordering at the same price.
So I think if I'm reading between the line, what you're saying is if you are using break comp cards as a reference for pricing, you have to take it with a grain of salt because it may not be current and up to date. It may not reflect this hobby moves so fast. It may not reflect current changes and that sort of thing. Like, are they feeding into your prices? Are they feeding into Fanatics live platform to pull the prices out?
Yeah, I mean, I had a discussion with them once just because. Listen, you can make anything look any way you want it when you're messing with numbers, right? If you're putting out a list like that, you could choose to make it the top 10 or you could choose to make it the top 12, right? You could choose to make it the top 15. You can make it look any single way you want. And you could also not have accurate data, right? Because people are breaking on Facebook. People also breaking on Fanatics and have to charge 10% more for fees. Yeah. So it's like you could pick and choose however you want to make it to make anybody look any certain way you want. Yeah. So I think that in concept, like I said, it's a good idea, but I think it needs to be refined for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark Santucci says, do you do older cards like 80s or current cards? Example, Judge and Trout. I don't know. I mean, you guys are breaking, so I don't know what you mean, Mark, but do you have an answer to this question?
It was older cards. I mean, we've done breaks before. It's not often, like a 75 tops mini box where everyone got a card and we're trying to grade out. We don't do it often. I know Vintage Break does that, if that's what he's referring to.
I don't know. I'm not sure what he's referring to because Mark. There, Filthbomb is in the group breaking business, and group breaking is 99% ultra modern type cards. So I'm seeing some comments in here that are sort of about the like 86 collectibles and Mike Kemmel talking about like a monopoly. And I think that I think you guys and the hobby in general is misdirecting a lot of your frustration in terms of these single licenses. You're misdirecting it at, I believe. So take this for you. You don't have to believe me, but this is my thought and I'm entitled to it, right? Is that you're misdirecting your frustration at, say, Fanatics or at, say, a group breaker. And single licenses have been the way since 2000 and 9, 10 in that era, across the sports. I think the real frustration should be directed, or is more reasonably directed, at the leagues, at the licensors, at the leagues and the PAs. They are the ones who are saying we only want one licensee in the sports card category. That's all they want. So does it not make sense if you love living in a free America, if you love America, or if you love Canada, you love North America, then you have to understand you live in a capitalistic society, and that the people with the most entrepreneurial spirit are going to and the most ability to convince and to negotiate are going to try and get that single license, and that just happens to be Fanatics. So it doesn't matter, Stephen, and everyone if it's Fanatics that has it, or Panini, or Topps, or Upper Deck, or Leaf, or some new company coming in, you guys are going to be frustrated with that company no matter who they are. And if you have to get that into your heads, that the frustration is with, I believe, the wrong group. It should be with the leagues. And if you really have an issue with it, take it to those licensors, take it to the people who are making the decision that a monopoly, I air quote it, because I'd rather use the term that a single license is the way to go. That's who you should be taking your frustration out with, I believe, not Fanatics, not on that topic. If you have issues with how Fanatics is doing things, That's another question. That's another story. Or Upper Deck or Panini or Tops. What do you think of that, Stephen? Am I barking up the wrong tree, or does that make sense to you?
No, I agree with that. And then I also want to say, like, we're gonna have all the players under one product. Like, don't you want to open up a basketball product where you have a chance at LeBron James autographs? Don't you want to open up Topps Chrome football? Yeah, like, everyone has to pick and choose. And right now we're doing Prism doesn't have, CJ Stroud autos or whatever. Like, it could all, because at the end of the day, those companies are going to fight with each other, and someone's going to always have someone else doesn't have. I think it hurts the end collector at the end of the day. If you're a purist, like, it should all be uniformed, and it should all just be, this is what they are, and all the players are under the same type of umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, it's Upper Deck having MJ and having LeBron for so long. That was part of their, I believe, survival after they lost basketball and football and baseball. And it's like, we still have two of the biggest athletes of all time under our umbrella, and we can do other things with them. But the collectors of those, and it's funny because, the basketball collectors specifically, as far as Jordan and LeBron go, on one hand, they're frustrated that they can't get LeBron and Jordan. And I think it's the sellers that are probably more frustrated than the buyers that they can't get those autographs. Whereas the people who've been collecting LeBron and Jordan autographs for many, many years don't want that to happen because they want their cards to remain valuable. There's a lot of concern amongst LeBron collectors right now that with Fanatics getting LeBron and more licensed LeBron autos entering the marketplace, that those old Upper Deck autos may go down in value. What do you think? What do you think of that? The potential for that and that discussion?
I mean, yeah, for sure. Like, first to the market, LeBrons right now are gonna definitely go for more than, if they produce LeBrons for the next 5 years tops. But at the same time, I don't think it's gonna be easy to hit LeBrons. So how many Brady's were you able to hit in Panini products? He was very scarce. So I think it's not going to really hurt as much as those people think it's going to hurt their current autographs. So they're not going to be flooding the market with Jordan autos. It's going to kind of be like short printed to 5. Let's pull one of these. And it's like a grail hit.
And that's what Upper Deck's been doing with Gretzky. I mean, even though there are plenty of Gretzky autos out there because they, it's a big draw for the product, but they're not flooding the market with them, which I think is good. Foul Fireball says, did the leagues just want one license? No, actually they did. The insider information I've heard is that the leagues did want one license, so they didn't have to deal with more than one. So yeah, they did. And it's on them. The competition is not present within each of the sports for sure. There's some talk about an unopened case of 1979 O-Pee-Chee hockey. Someone asked if Fanatics will buy. I don't think this is the right show for that question. Are you even aware of that it exists? Do you know what I'm talking about? No. Okay, we'll just skip that. We'll just skip that altogether. Okay. All right. Let's talk about repacks, because the repack thing is another kind of controversial topic as of late, Stephen, where a lot of breakers have, my understanding, have moved over to the repack because maybe the breaking business hasn't been as good, or they're not getting allocation. And then there's the issues around repacks of, are they transparent, and are, is it really fair? How first of all, what have you guys done as far as repacks? I have a whole bunch of questions here. They were all in there. First, okay, so what have you guys done for repacks? And in this group of questions, I'll also kind of say, like, did you need to move to repacks, or is it something that you guys have done because it's just another revenue stream, another way to get product out there?
All right, so when we first started doing repacks, it's a learning process, right? There's no regulation. Again, there's no rule book on how to do it. So the first thing we did that I would say we did wrong was not having a checklist. No one has checklists really for the repacks, but we now have a checklist, which is really, I think, should be the standard in the hobby. if you have a repack, there has to be a checklist, because you could be chasing a card that doesn't even exist. Number two, to address your second part, we didn't do it because we felt it was another revenue stream or we had to. We felt like it added value to the breaks that we were doing, because a lot of times, you could open up a case of Bowman Chrome and the best card's $300. But if we're throwing in a $500 box or $500 box, you're guaranteed, just out of that one box, you're guaranteed a card that's minimum $150 with the upside of, in our current line, 10,000 or 12,000, whatever it is. So in our run, there's 1,000 cards. Obviously, there's one card that's worth 12,000. There's a Ruth cut in there, but so the odds, but there's still better odds probably than you hitting the Brady 12 of 50, right? There's only 1,000 boxes. So we felt like it was just a way to add value. So someone was leaving the break guaranteed with something of value,
Right. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to this question from 86 Collectibles. What happens if 90% of the hobby doesn't like the product that comes out? We have no other companies to support. Not saying this will happen, just saying if. And I mean, I just want to take a stab at that first, Stephen. And this goes back to the whole like single license thing. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We've been through it enough now where nobody liked Panini Prism when it came out in 2012. Yet look at it now. So, I mean, quite simply, it's not even worth discussing, in my opinion, because and the other thing when it comes to Fanatics is that they acquired Topps, and Topps has been making cards for 70 years. So I think part of them acquiring Topps was in order to mitigate the risk that they don't put out product nobody likes, because if we acquire a brand that's been around a while, and a lot of the IP, we're really mitigating that risk. So I don't think it's going to happen. And if it does, what's going to happen? Well, then it's going to fix itself. Why? Because if no one buys the product, the royalties are going to go down, are going to come down, that are going back to the leagues and the PAs. And then they're going to have to find a way to fix that, because they're going to want to, regenerate that money. So that's what happened. That might be the best thing for people who want there to be more than one license, is that, but the problem is, in this hobby, we've learned the hobby doesn't speak with its wallet. It wants to speak with its wallet. It will bitch and complain nonstop, but they never, generally speaking, they never speak with their wallet. So it's just not going to happen. And because the hobby doesn't speak with its wallet, except that they just empty it, we're probably going to be in the single licensee era for a very long time, are my thoughts. Anything to add to that, Stephen?
I mean, I think this is just the beginning. Like, where it's going to happen within 18 months, right? Is that when Panini's license is up? I think
it's coming up. It's around the corner. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's inevitable now, and no point of even complaining about it at this point.
Yeah, either adapt into it or put your money and attention and passion elsewhere, because that's where you are right now. Plus you have 140 years of sports cards in the past that you could also go back to and continue to collect. I want to touch one more thing on repacks, because you said something good and there's some comments in the chat. I agree. I think there's two things to make a repack bulletproof. One is full transparency. So transparency of the checklist. So if it's a 50 card product, 50 repack product, 50 packs available, here's all 50 cards, and I'm going to sell them one at a time, but I'm not going to open them on my live stream channel until they're all sold. So if you buy the first one, you better be prepared to wait until I sell that 50th one. And then I'm opening them all on one broadcast, one live stream, all 50 packs, one live stream, so that everybody can see that all 50 of those cards on the checklist came out of that pack. To me, that makes for a bulletproof repack product and system. What do you think of that?
So in theory, yes, I do agree, and I like the idea. It's just when you're trying to do a run, or you're just trying to use them to throw into breaks as like a juicer for the break to add value to the break, then it becomes hard. I think though everything needs to be opened up on stream. Can't sell anything through the website, ship sealed, can't sell anything in your storefront. Like it all has to be traceable, right? So if someone's like, hey, that card never came out, I'd be like, let's go back because we know that card was hit on stream. The checklist is definitely very important, but then also back to the regulations. Like any company making their own product, you can rig it, right? Like you definitely can rig it. So it comes down to reputation. You have to be able to trust them, have to be able to like believe that they're not rigging it. And then like, it wouldn't be the worst thing to have a third party. Like you curate it, you make your checklist, and then you have somebody do the packing that has nothing to do with you. So nobody in your company knows where anything is. Because at the end of the day, like, we have a room we produce the repacks in, and it's like, subconsciously I have an idea of the vicinity that case is, you know? So it's like I send my guys in there, I'm like, somebody go pick a case, because like I'm not doing it, you know, because like if I don't pick that case, it's even worse, because like if I go to the left because I think it's on the right, it's even worse because it's like I'm, you know, so it's like it's almost better to get somebody to regulate it, an outside party where they just pack it, they bring it back, and it's like, here's your cards.
Yeah, that's a good idea for sure. I think that's another bullet point to add to the list I started there of, you know, how to make a repack product bulletproof. Michael says, is Fanatics going to favor their live breakers over hobby shops on unopened product? I mean, you're obviously not qualified to answer this, but I'll put it out there for discussion anyway.
Like you kind of have to look at where's more of the product selling, right? I would guess if I'm running the business, like I'm sending the product to where most of it's going to sell. So if a hobby shop wants 50 cases, but they can move 10, that's like back to what I was talking about, the Wild West. People were getting cases they couldn't even sell, but they were flipping them. So like, how's that helping the hobby? You know, the hobby shop's allocated 15 cases. They could sell 2 in store, but they're flipping the other 13 to breakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same thing, right? So now it's like my hobby shop's complaining they're only getting X amount of cases. It's like, yeah, because they're not flipping them.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Foul of Fireball says, when Fanatics buys or puts Upper Deck out of business for the hockey license, will you change your mind about Fanatics, Jeremy? No, I'm a logical thinker, Foul of Fireball. I'm also a realist. So will I change my opinion? No, I probably won't. Like, I love Upper Deck cards. I personally think Upper Deck makes the best quality card. I think they're the look and feel, the weight, I think Upper Deck makes the best cards out there, personally. Now, if Fanatics were to buy Upper Deck and keep the brands and keep most of the people like they have with Tops, I believe, I'm not sure. I know they did for a while. You know what? I'm gonna judge it at the time. I can't say that right now because this comment assumes it's going to happen. I'm not making that assumption. I'm not even close to making that assumption. If and when it happens, yeah, I'm going to reserve the right to change my opinion. I'm human. I'm entitled to that. But I'll understand it. I will understand it because it's the way of the world. And I'm also somebody who I like change and I adapt to change. If you don't adapt to change, you're going to be left behind in not just in the hobby, but in life, in the whole world. You will be left behind if you cannot adapt to change. So, I mean, that's how I live. That's how I want to continue living. And then what I'll do is if I don't like the cards, I will not buy them. I don't buy modern product already. I wait a few years. You know, I see how the players do. I don't prospect. I don't do any of that. So, I mean, we'll see what comes with it. But, I understand that breaking and that modern product is a huge part of the hobby. I understand that Fanatics is a huge part of the hobby right now. And I'm very interested and hopeful for the long-term health of the hobby. But, I'm one small voice. I don't have a say in it. So I'm going to adapt because I don't have a vote. And even in your federal politics, yeah, you have a vote and it's important. But if you vote one way or the other yourself, is that going to change the outcome? Maybe not. Did you want to jump in with something, Stephen?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base. I see a lot of comments on the break comp thing. So I just want to clarify. Like, I do think in theory it's a great idea. I think that one thing they should do is kind of like make tiers, right? Because somebody selling a product on Fanatics compared to somebody selling it off platform accepting Zelle payment, right off the bat, you can't compete with that, right? And then it's also like you should have, the breakers that are similar to each other, the bigger breakers, the operations, because it kind of does. I see right now they're going to war with somebody, but it's just compare that person to the other breakers in their field. If that breaker is still grossly overpriced, they're grossly overpriced. But to compare, a company with 25 employees or 15, 20 employees to a company that's one person with 2 cases, it makes that company it makes us sometimes look terrible. Like we'll be ranked like 28 out of 30, but it's like to a lot of people on that list, like we're within $200 of our quote unquote real competitors. So like that's one thing I think could be refined. Like you say, hey, these are the guys, the one-offs, and then this is, your top 10, the hobby's top 10, what they're priced at. I think that's the one gripe I would say that can make it a little better.
And with all these things, like all these discussion topics that we are going through here tonight, I think like, whether it be, group breaking just as a service in the hobby and how it's going, the single license, the Fanatics coming in, what they're doing, and what all of these, the repack, all of these things, we have to understand, guys, we are in a transitional period here still. The hobby is in a transitional period, and until some of these things flush out, and it doesn't happen that fast. These things are going to take a couple of years, if not like five years. I don't know about you guys, but like I guess I'm a little bit more patient. I'm also not pumping money into certain things, so I can afford to be patient. I spend plenty of money in the hobby, don't get me wrong, but I mean, we are in a transitional period, and you have to understand that, the talk about regulation that we had earlier and some of these different things, the pricing models, these are things that are going to improve over time, but you're not going to just like blink your eyes like I Dream of Genie. Some of you might not know that reference, and eventually end up in a perfect world by all of your guys's, standards, by everyone else, by your standards, everyone out there. It's not just going to happen. It's going to take time to get there. Just like everything takes time to evolve and find its equilibrium and find its best best representation in the hobby. So during this transitional period, we're a very impatient hobby. We're a very impatient society now, right? With instant gratification, all that, about that. I mean, you have to understand these things aren't going to happen right away. And if you expect them to, again, you're just causing yourself a lot of frustration, because it's not going to happen any other way. Now, if it never works itself out, and I think the one thing we talked about, Fanatics coming in and putting some standards on the group breakers that are under their umbrella, that is the step towards being better. I'm not saying everything Fanatics is doing is towards being better. I don't know, but that is a step towards evolving the hobby into an eventual state that is going to be better for the customers. And now, again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everything they're doing is going to end up in that. And Fanatics is going to make mistakes along the way. Probably they have made mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. But I feel like a company like that, who has so much money on the line and they have to answer to investors, they're going to fail fast. They're going to fail fast. They're going to try and fix these things as fast as they can, and just rectify. Every entrepreneur, Stephen, you had failures along the way before you started Filthbomb. There's more failures than there are successes for almost every successful entrepreneur out there. And again, this is reality. It's just the way the world works. So comments to you after I've been speaking there for a while, Stephen, please.
No, I agree. You just got to wait and see how it all shakes up. There seems to be a storyline in place right now, or people are going with the whole 10xing the hobby's terrible, making, it's a joke. You gotta just wait and see, because nobody did anything with the hobby until COVID. And then you just saw the tip of the iceberg of what was actually capable of the hobby, right? Although it was unregulated. It was just, I keep saying the Wild West, but that's what it was. Like, there was so much potential. And now it's going to take 5 years, 10 years before we're actually able to get it to what, I mean, Fanatics has the money, but you could have the same vision without having that money. Like, what the potential is of the hobby, right? Like, what it's capable of, what it could be. It's just Fanatics has a bankroll to, do it.
And they are doing it. Michael says, I wouldn't mind seeing some new O-Pee-Chee Chrome refractors again. Well, that's what O-Pee-Chee Platinum is. That is your O-Pee-Chee Chrome. He also says, I think a lot of collectors feel like big business is taking control of their hobby and don't like it. I got to tell you, they're just, I mean, fair enough that they're seeing it that way. Panini was a big business. Panini is owned by Panini out of Italy. Panini America owned by Panini out of Italy. Big business. Topps has been in business for 75 years. Upper Decks, and these aren't huge conglomerates, but these are big. And Topps is owned by Disney. That's big business. Now it's owned by Fanatics. I'm not sure which company is bigger, Fanatics or Disney. I'm thinking Disney might be bigger, but I could be wrong. I could be way off on that. I just don't know. But I think a lot of collectors that this comment references just are selectively seeing things. And again, I don't have a horse in the race personally. I don't get into breaks. The odd time I go into breaks, but again, I think it could be Fanatics or anybody else that has the single license, and we'd have a lot of the same complaints for sure. I think so. Terp Enforcer says, and welcome to the show, Terp, says, some people think the hobby is dying, but really the hobby is just correcting itself from COVID. I think that's exactly right. I mean, again, if you run the graphs and you just take out, 2021, things are looking okay as far as the, cards from the old, as far as like, vintage goes and pre-pandemic type of cards for sure. And then Adam Rip says, doesn't matter if Disney or Fanatics is bigger. Filthbomb is bigger than both combined. Adam Rips, welcome to the show. Yeah. Nice tongue-in-cheek comment, but we get the sentiment for sure. All right. Let me ask you this here, because a lot of, there is this distinction, Stephen, between customers of group breaks and people who like ripping wax versus people who just want to buy singles. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of customers of a lot of group break customers are getting their cards and then they're selling them. They're selling them to get more money to either buy singles or go into more group breaks. My question is, how do we as a hobby and how do you as a group breaker work to convert some of these breaking customers into lifelong collectors? Is that possible? Are you doing anything to do that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier to do it with a baseball collector for sure. Because like we spoke about in the past, you and I, the baseball collector, there's somebody for everyone. So when we run player breaks, for example, and in baseball, we're selling Ernie Banks, we're selling Johnny Bench, we're selling Dale Murphy, we're selling Julio Rodriguez, we're selling Wyatt Langford. And all these guys sell. So it's like you do have the diehard collector. You have a 28-year-old out there that actually wants to buy an Ozzie Smith autograph, right? Like, that's pretty cool. And it's like, it's very, it goes very hand in hand. But then at the same token, you try to do a player break on football and you try to sell Roger Staubach's spot. Good luck. I don't know. I couldn't. Nobody wants a Rogers, like they do, but they don't in card world, right? Somebody will wait online for an autograph from him, but nobody wants his card. But they're just chasing Pickett, Burrow, Herbert, Tua. And there's like the top 1% on the checklist, and then no one else. Everyone else is dead. Like, you can't move anyone. So it's a lot of.
got a buddy in the hobby who likes to say, and I think he says it half tongue in cheek, but if you're on Instagram and you follow people, you probably follow this guy. He likes to say that nobody collects football cards. And, because listen, people open football cards, and I have a small football collection. I think I have maybe 18 to 20 cards in my personal football collection. What is your perspective? Your perspective of football hobby? I'll call them hobbyists, so I don't have to call them collectors. Football hobbyists versus baseball hobbyists and basketball and even hockey hobbyists.
So, like, everyone is a collector, but an investor at the same time, right? So, like, football cards and basketball cards are way too volatile. It's like crypto. And baseball cards are a lot more safe, a lot more conservative. You're not going to see the huge jump unless it's like once in a generation Ohtani, something like that. But football, man, it's week to week. Somebody could be selling for 10x and now he's minus 10x the next week. Basketball the same way. So I do think there's like, it's so hard, man. It's because people do collect, right? But not to the same. Like, I feel like baseball is the true collectors, and people don't collect the same way on the other sports. It is. I want to stay away from the word gambling because they're not really gambling, but they're looking to buy to flip.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think baseball has a bit of both. I think my thoughts on the strength of the collector bases are baseball has the strongest foundation of collectors right from vintage until modern. There are people who've been collecting top sets from 1954 until 2024. They want them all, right? So I think or 52. I think that's a very strong collector base, but it also has the prospectors, which is really, it's like I relate it to day trading, and I know there's many differences, but that's just kind of how I compare it. I look at that as kind of the day trading where the collector or the investor of vintage cards is more of the long-term investor in the financial markets. Then I think second most healthiest foundation is in hockey. Hockey has a very strong foundation of collectors. It has its prospectors too, but at a much lower degree, all else being equal, relatively speaking, to baseball. And then you've got basketball, which is, it's hot. It's lots of the flipper mentality, lots of the most recent rookie, lots of money that goes into, similar to football with the quarterbacks. And football is where I'm not so sure, because I think that, like, I know there are people that collect vintage football, but I wanted to sort of, first of all, get your thoughts on what I just went through. And then, when it comes to football, any sport really, investors, people who are hobbyists with an investment mindset are going to look to the goats of the sport. Basketball, it's easy to identify. Hockey, it's pretty easy. Baseball, a little bit harder, but still, there's lots of great players in the history. And then football, it's like, who are the go? Will come Joe Montana, Barry Sanders come to mind for me, and then of course Tom Brady. Goes without saying. I want you to lead off your response to this with, like, who are people collecting Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman and Joe Montana and Dan Marino and John Elway and all these guys, Randy Moss, even all these guys through the 80s and 90s, that Jerry Rice, I might have said him already. Like, do these guys have, in your estimate, a loyal collector base?
Yeah, but it's so weird. I don't think it's a card collector base. I think it's a memorabilia collector base. They have those guys that are willing to wait on the TriStar line for like 8 hours, to get a meet and greet. Whereas, I mean, I think the perfect way to see it is just look at like the downtown sales, right? Go look at a Barry Sanders and then compare him to a superstar vet that's not a quarterback right now. And it's like the sales aren't very strong, like Saquon Barkley sells for as much as Barry Sanders on the downtown. Saquon's, I think it's more memorabilia for those kind of guys.
Yeah. And then what about, Actually, we're going to go to comments because this helps a lot here. Dan here says there are tables at vintage card shows with just football and just basketball, and they have just as much foot traffic as baseball tables. I mean, I don't buy that, Dan, personally. I mean, I've been to all the card shows, well, not all of them, but many of them, and I don't see that. I don't see that. Now, with basketball, there's really only 3 vintage sets before 1970. It really is. There's not a lot of choice there. So that's a huge, just a huge barrier against there being a ton of vintage basketball collectors. But then then 68 or 69 hits, and you got a lot more sets. And I think there are collectors of that. And especially when you have, especially in the 1980 tops, when that came out, I think now you're seeing people who collect 80 tops, and then the kind of maybe the odd people that dabble in Star, and then 86 Fleer is when it really obviously starts, and of course Upper Deck in 1991. But and I agree with Dan. There are collectors of basketball and football, for sure there are, but on a like per capita basis within the sport, I think it's just very small compared to baseball and hockey for that matter. And Turpin Forster says basketball has a strong Asia-Europe market that keeps basketball strong with America. Yeah, like that's a great call out right there too, Terp. I definitely agree with that. And there was a comment about soccer. Decoy says soccer won't get mentioned, but they're incredibly dedicated. So much history in it globally that North America's a bit behind on it due to the other sports. I think we're behind on it because we just don't care as much. I don't think North Americans care if you have a connection to your team over in Europe. But for the most part, North Americans don't care nearly as much about soccer as they do about baseball in the States, hockey in Canada. The NFL is a beast in and of itself. So, Stephen, any comments on that kind of stuff?
Well, to Decoy's comment, I haven't been tracking it closely, but hasn't the soccer market in general tanked? That's what I'm seeing, because I have some like really nice Mbappe stuff, and it's just down so much. So it's like they might have a dedicated fan base or collector base, but they're not necessarily driving up the prices of soccer cards right now.
Yeah. John here says, Jeremy, are you excited about Upper Deck adding a 1-of-1 Young Guns? That's a great question, John. I think it was inevitable, first of all. I think it was inevitable. But your question is, am I excited about it? Listen, I'm somewhat indifferent, John. I think it's going to add excitement, especially when Series 2 comes out with the Connor Bedard. That will be interesting, and I'd like you to ask me again at that time. But I can tell you unequivocally, I don't own a single Young Guns. People come up to me at card shows and say, "Are you looking to buy or trade?" And they show me a Young Gun. I say, "I don't do Young Guns. I deliberately just don't do Young Guns for what it's worth. There's no real great reason for it. Everyone else has them, so I don't do Young Guns. Now, not everyone else has the 1-of-1, but am I excited about it? I don't think I'm excited. I'm interested. I'm interested in it. How about you, Stephen? I know you don't do a lot of hockey, but what are your thoughts on that?
I know that card's gonna go. That 1-of-1 Bedard's gonna go crazy. That's the type of card that's gonna bring people into the hockey space that aren't in the hockey space,
right?
Which in turn should drive up hockey.
And there will be bounties placed on that card. I'm obviously convinced of that. Are you willing to put just take a guess what you think we'll see in terms of bounties on the Connor Bedard 1-of-1? I forget what outburst or sunburst. Do you know I forget what they're called.
So let's do this. Do you know, because I don't know comps on hockey, what's the McDavid go for? Just a PSA 10.
Just a PSA 10 Young Gun?
Yeah.
Like I think they're like $2,500 to $3,000 maybe in there somewhere.
All right. So what's Bedard in this market is probably going to do what, like $700-800 maybe?
For a PSA 10?
Yeah, because it's going to be way more of them, right?
It's going to be more. I think raw they're going to come out at $1,000. All right. Don't underestimate the allure, and I know the allure of the hottest, most recent rookie.
First comps and everything. Yeah. All right. So what do you think they settle in at? Like 1,500 to 2K? He can't go for more than McDavid, can it?
Oh, sure it can.
You think who settles in at that?
Well, how long down the road? I mean, it's
3 months. 3 months.
Yeah,
of the first
so I mean,
PSA 10
after
sale.
it comes out, will be in the summer. It's a tough time, right? PSA, are we talking PSA 10 or are we talking raw?
Yeah, just PSA 10. If a McDavid does, you said 2,500.
I could be $3,000, call it somewhere in there.
All right. So like, what can the bounty be then on that one of one? What's it worth? That was my next question. What's it going to be worth? So is 100K too high or too low?
I think it's going to be more personally.
So, all right. So then, if you had the opportunity to buy it, right? Funds, unlimited funds, you have the opportunity to buy it. 250K. Is that what the card's worth?
I can see, yeah, Terp just put that in the chat, right? As you said, I could see it being, I can see the bounty being 250 minimum. I can see the bounty being $500,000 on that card.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If the card's 250, the bounty's got to be more. So like, I could see like $500,000 on the bounty. I really could.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
More maybe. If somebody wants to stir it up, they could have $1 million on the bounty.
I could see it being encroaching upon $1 million for the one-on-one Connor Bedard. I mean, he's hurt right now, which might hurt his young guns upon release a little bit, but right now it's not hurting his cards that are out there. He seems to be the real deal. I don't think he's as good as McDavid. I don't think he'll be as good as McDavid, but that doesn't really matter in the card market. It doesn't really matter. It's all about potential. He now has 20 years ahead of him to win Stanley Cups and win Hart trophies and Art Ross trophies, whereas McDavid has the Harts and the Art Rosses, but he doesn't have the Stanley. And Bedard also, there's 20 years to win the Stanley Cup. McDavid needs to win the Stanley Cup for his prices to, I think, stay where they are in the long term, or at least, continue along the same path that they've been on over time. So, I think that the Bedard hype is real, and he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. Will he be the second best player in the league? I mean, maybe. It's going to be, you got a few other good guys up there with Pasternak and Kucherov and Nathan McKinnon, who's just beast moding right now. It's tough to say. And I want a lot of people to understand this too. The Edmonton Oilers today won their 16th game in a row, and they're 1 away from the league record. So 2 away from owning the record. But if you look at who they beat over those games, not including today, it's like no team is better than 15th in the league. So all the teams that they beat along the way are in the bottom half of the NHL standing. So as impressive as it is, you have to take it with a grain of salt. I don't want to take anything away from it. I think it's awesome, but anyway, all of that there. Decoy Cards here says, if you pull it yourself, hide it, then buy up every case you can. Yeah, right. If you pull the card, right? I mean, that's market manipulation at its finest. But if someone does it on the down low, that's a strategy that somebody might take, right? So,
non-regulated.
All right. Hey,
it said unregulated. Again,
right,
exactly. It's not regulated. It's not.
Exactly. All right, man. We're getting to the point of winding this up. Actually, let's do this comment here. I want to get your answer to this. Bob's Big Boy just puts this in. Aren't these bounties unhealthy in the long term? Feels like another step towards games of chance and lotto scratch-offs. Feels like an artificial stimulus. Aren't the cards strong enough on their own? So what do you see? The world of bounties on some, I'll leave it up. The world of bounties on some of these big cards we've seen recently. What do you think? Is it unhealthy in the long run?
I mean, it's unhealthy if it's being like the Jordan Walker debut patch bounty was put out by a collector that wanted the card. The Brady 12 of 50s put out by a collector that wants the card. So it's like, that's what that person wants. If somebody wants to put a price on it themselves, it's a bounty, but it's from a collector that wants that in their collection. It's never going to leave. The bounties by like David Adams, I mean, they could do whatever they want at the end of the day because they're selling the wax as well. So they're putting their money where their mouth is. If you hit it and you want to sell it to us for 500K, we'll take it. So it's not really lotto scratch off. It's somebody putting a price on it, and the card they're putting a price on isn't worthless to begin with. So it's just an extra incentive.
It's I think I agree with that last bit right there, in that with or without the bounty, there already are unspoken bounties on these cards, because as soon as you get that, you hit that card yourself, you're gonna be able to cash in. bounty or not, you're going to be able to cash in. I think really the sentiment from Bob's Big Boy is the fact that they're out there kind of like, is it just helping to drive the demand for the unopened product, which of course it is. I have to think that when an LCS puts out a bounty on a card, part in their mind, it must be to drive demand. Do you like, what do you see the benefits are for a Dave and Adams to put? Why are they putting bounties on cards, do you think?
I mean, they're selling the wax themselves, on their site. So if it's going to drum up traffic and you're going to make more sales, I'm sure, if the card's worth 100K, 300K, and you're paying more than it's worth, you're making it back on the wax, in the volume that they do. And it makes it fun too at the end of the day. It's like, it's a chase. Everyone wants a treasure hunt,
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Mark Santucci. Tries to rank the hockey players. So, Mark, I think you have, so you say 1 McDavid, 2 McKinnon, 3 Matthews. I think 1 and 2 are right. I think 3 is more or less in the 6th spot. I put 4 and 5. I put 3 and 4 as Kucherov and Pasternak. And that's where I've got them. And then I put Matthews beneath them both, actually, personally. Turpin Forster agrees with these things. Says they recover that money from wax sales. Yeah, I mean, I think part of these bounties is to help elevate the value of the unopened product, which speaks to Big Boy's comment. I mean, it is an artificial stimulus, but at the end of the day, if they're going to cut that check, and again, guys, you listen, I'm not judging it here, but what I will say is that it is the landscape that we are in. We are in that landscape. So we can critique it and judge it and talk about it all we want. But at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to matter to you as an individual is how you adapt and respond to it yourself, right? Everybody, most of us, we're big boys and girls out there. We can decide what we want to do. And if you want to, I'll just use the simple term, fall for it. Well, that's on you. I mean, that's on you. And I'm not gonna. I'll take responsibility for myself in this space. I'm not gonna take responsibility for anybody else. If you are gonna do that and you're gonna buy more product at the elevated price because there are bounties out there on it, good. You have a chance at cashing in on that bounty. So listen, I'm not saying I like it or don't like it. I'm just saying that it's the world we live in. And as a participant in this hobby, I'm going to adapt accordingly so that it works for me. And I implore you all to do what you need to do to make it work for you as well. So, comment on all that, Stephen?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's just marketing. It's no different than the Monopoly game at McDonald's. It's no different. They're driving sales for you to buy more McDonald's, and you're trying to get Park Place. And it's a race to the million. It's the same thing, and they're going to give it to you if you get it. It's marketing.
Oh, there is one catch to that specific example, which was that whole thing was rigged back in the day because
it might have been. I don't know, but
there's a documentary on it. Yeah. But and then so now that even at the level of McDonald's, these things can be rigged. And it was someone, I think, at the audit company. It was actually one of their auditors, I believe, that went sideways on the whole thing. And so, again, proceed accordingly, guys. It's like Foul Five Ball said earlier. I don't like breaking. I buy my own cards. Great. Foul Five Ball has figured out how to exist in the hobby and remain happy with his activities. Y'all can do that too. No one is putting a gun to your head and saying, buy this product or that product. Buy the product that there's bounties out on, and you may not hit the big card. No one's putting guns to our heads. So I just be accountable to yourself, take responsibility, and proceed the way that's going to make sense to you and allow you to remain in the hobby. Hopefully, you're happy in the hobby. A lot of people are. We have a lot of disgruntled hobbyists who stay in anyway. It's like misery loves company. It's like they like to punish themselves. That's fine too. We need those people out there because they are also opening products and helping us get more products into the secondary market where a lot of us like to operate. So, I mean, yeah, I'm all for product getting opened one way or another. I just want the people doing it to not put themselves into financial distress. That's really important to me. I don't want anybody to be in financial trouble, especially if you have a family. I mean, get help if you need it. Get help if you need it, right?
Agree.
Play at your own risk, says Michael. Tom Newman says, this is a great episode. Thank you, Tom. Dave Kaplan, appreciate the comment. Foul Fireball says, bounties might be business tax deductible. Yes, they are. As soon as you write a check for something, that now becomes, well, they're buying a piece of inventory. They're going to eventually sell that piece of inventory, and they're going to get to write off the cost of goods sold on it at that time, I believe, at that time. So, all right. And Mark Santucci says, I'm 85% happy in the hobby. Mark, that's a good rate. I don't think any of us are happy a lot of the time. You own a card, you see it go down in value, you might not be as happy. A lot of people say, I don't care if my cards go to zero. I'm going to be happy. I don't look at these as investments. Good for them. Those guys are really lucky that they can afford to have their cards go down to zero. Personally, I can't. I'm going to get sad if my cards go down to zero. I'm not going to be the happiest kid in Canada if that happens. But I'm also going to know that I put myself into this. I'm not going to blame anybody. I'm going to only look into myself. So anything on that, Steve?
Everybody just do what you want in the hobby, whatever makes you happy. At the end of the day, it is a hobby. I used to say it when I broke every single day. The main thing is you're having fun on the stream, because we're not going to be able to take any of this stuff with us when we're gone. So like, no matter what you're doing, no matter how you're collecting, no matter what you're buying, it's just to satisfy you and make you feel complete in this lifetime. Because when it's all done, it's all done. None of it matters anyway. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, no, fair for sure. Michael here says, Stephen has a great last name. Must have been first in attendance at school. Abbondondolo. That's how you say it. Abbondondolo. I got it, right?
You got it.
Nailed it. I nailed it. I didn't in my opening. I flubbed it up in the opening, Stephen, but I got it now. I got it now for sure. All right. Anything you'd like to leave any words of wisdom, anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we wind this up?
I mean, I just want everyone to be positive and optimistic about what's to come. Whether you get in breaks, whether you just buy cards from your LCS, whether you just go on eBay and buy singles. The main thing is we're all in this hobby right now together, no matter what segment you're in, and it's getting stronger, and everyone should be happy about that. No matter what part of it you're in, I could almost guarantee that segment has also been getting stronger over the last year, over the last 2-3 years. So it's like, enjoy the ride. I truly do believe we haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg was COVID. Now we're leveling out. But what's going to happen with this hobby is going to be like 20x COVID when it's all said and done, when all the pieces are in place, when all the athletes are under the same license, when it's just going to be, I see celebrities getting involved. Like, you're going to have a license. Like, I really truly believe you're going to have a licensed Topps product where you're chasing Drake, you're chasing Kanye, but then you're also chasing Ruth in the same product. Like, it's going to be, everything under one umbrella, and it's going to be like a different world than we're living in right this second.
Yeah. And listen, people are going to complain about that. They're going to say, I'm not buying sports cards to hit cards of Drake or whoever, but don't buy that product then. Like, that's the thing. There's going to be options for you. And as many products as a Fanatics or a Panini or an Upper Deck or Leaf makes that you don't like, there's going to be just as many that maybe you do. And that's think about how far we've come. Back in the 70s and 80s, you had maybe 3 products to choose from. Maybe if you were lucky. In the 70s, you had 1, right? Most of the 80s, you had 1 in at least a couple sports. So now you have your option of like 20 or 30, and you don't have to like them all. That's why they make so many, because they're making them for different segments of the community. They're not making every product for every person. So if you don't like a product, the card company doesn't care that you don't like one of their products. If you don't like 100% of their products, they're going to care a bit more. But if you like one of them, they're probably going to be a little bit happy that you like at least one of them, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to cover all the different segments and even all the different price points, so that, you know, people can buy in for $100. You know, I don't know what the price points are, but say $80 a box or $150 or $10,000. They're going to try and hit all those different price points so that people can take part in it at all different levels. Bob's Big Boy here says, you know, isn't it an assumed sense of hobby omniscience? I don't even know what that means. If we declare that these 10 cards have not been hit, isn't there a chance that someone has won? I don't think anyone's declaring that they're not hit, because that would be irresponsible. That'd be completely irresponsible. It's like you need that disclaimer that these cards might have been hit. But he says, isn't there a chance that someone has one or more of these cards in their PC and kept it hush hush? Yeah, that's what we were talking about before. We talked about that before in the context of the Bedard discussion, Bob's Big Boy. And I think there's completely that possibility. And that's why you have to proceed accordingly. 100% have to proceed accordingly. 86 says, my wife isn't getting anything. I'm taking my Crosby rookie with me. Bob's Big Boy, love the show and Filthbomb content. Keep up the great work, all parties. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mark Santucci. Always appreciate it. Thanks, 86 says, great show as always. Thank you both for your time. Turp Enforcer, Jeremy, I love your shows. Always informative. Thank you so much, Turp. And Eric Stefano says, awesome show, guys. You nailed it. Thank you, Eric. All right, guys, we are going to wrap this one up. We are going to we're going to come in a couple minutes under 2 hours, which is great, where we like to get. So with that, Stephen, final opportunity to say your last words of the show, and you know, give us a, you know, you're an entrepreneur. You chase something you wanted to do. You wanted to do something that made you happy in life versus being an accountant, and I can completely identify with that. Exactly with that. So give us some words of encouragement before we sign off.
What I would say to everyone in there, anyone in the chat right now, right, is we only have one life. We're only going to live one life. You got to be happy. And if you're doing something right now that you don't necessarily like, don't be afraid to take that chance and do something that you do like. You might be, you know, you might be strapped financially. You might not be able to take that chance, but I promise you, if you take that leap and you do something you love and you give it 150%, it will not feel like you're working, and you'll be able to get to where you need to go to be successful. That would be my final words for everyone in the show right now. Do what you love, and it's really true. You'll feel like you never work another day in your life.
Follow your dreams and passion. Don't, you know, believe in yourself, right? Take some, you know, if you got to just keep in context. You know, it depends if you have a family and you got to pay the bills and you can't afford to go a year without making much money. Just be careful with some of the risks you take. But I do agree, Stephen. We only live once, so make the most of it. Michael, thank you so much. Foul Fireball says, I'm happy to have this hobby. I have my opinions and stick to them. They might not all be positive. That's okay. Jeremy, Bob's Big Boy, what is the bounty on growing a Coach Co mustache? Very good, very good. And John Yo says, you need to be a realistic chase, Bob. That's a 1 of 1 for sure. All right, guys. Thank you to the chat for joining us. Excuse me, fighting this cough still. Thank you to the chat. Appreciate all your comments and questions tonight. Stephen, thank you for coming on, man. Had fun. Happy to. I told you earlier, I don't think I've ever had a breaker on, but I did. I had one on probably 3 years ago now, maybe 3.5 years ago. So you're the first one in that amount of time. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for facing some of the tough questions along the way. Appreciate it.
Of course.
So thank you.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. Had a great time.
You are welcome. All right, guys. That's it for Saturday night. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next Saturday as well. We'll see you tomorrow on the PWCC Weekly Hockey, and Monday on the MC Mondays Live. And with that, this episode of Sports Cards Live is over. Steve, you stay right there.